Today I'm making an onion tarte tatin. Now originally a tarte tatin was made with caramelized apples and it's a tart that's baked upside down. But I'm making a caramelized onion one. Now if you want me to make an apple tarte tatin, just drop me a comment below and let me know. It's actually quite easy to make. Now I'm making the short crust pastry from scratch, but you can definitely use store-bought short crust or puff pastry for this. And then really all the work you have to put in is to cut up the onion and caramelize it. When cutting the onions, you have to just trim the root bit off, peel and then cut it. Cut it in half lengthwise, in half again and then again. Try to keep the wedges of onion intact as much as possible, but if they break up here and there, it's fine. It's just prettier when the wedges are intact. Heat a knob of butter along with some olive oil in a large pan. Roughly, the size of your pan should be around the same size of the tart dish that you're baking this in. Once the butter has melted, stir in some sugar. It doesn't need to caramelize at this point because it will caramelize slowly as the onions are cooking. Spread out the butter sugar mixture to cover the bottom of the pan and then put in your onion wedges cut side down. Lay them out flat so that they can start to caramelize. I'm using a mix of white and red onion to give it a bit of a variety. Once all your onions are in, pour in the balsamic vinegar, water, and season with a little sprinkling of salt and a sprig of thyme. Let this simmer away on a medium heat for about 15 minutes. While your onions are cooking, let's make the short crust pastry. Making this at home is completely optional. Store-bought pastry will work just fine, and either short crust or puff pastry both work fine for this dish. But making short crust pastry at home is pretty simple and it takes next to no time. In a large bowl, just knead together some flour, cold butter, thyme and salt. Use your hands and massage the flour and butter together until you have a crumbly sand-like consistency. Using cold butter is important to get the texture right. If your butter is melted, then you get a more pasty mixture and won't have that nice crumble once you bake it. A little hack is to cube up your butter and then pop it in the fridge for about 20 minutes before you start making your pastry. Once you have a sandy consistency and there are no big lumps of butter left, you can pour in the water. Do this a little at a time and slowly bring your dough together. Just as it starts to come together, tip the dough out onto your table and give it a quick knead to form it into a ball. Cover this with cling and pop it in the fridge to rest. This will help the gluten relax, which makes for a better pastry. By the time your pastry is ready, your onions should be ready to turn. Carefully slide a flat spatula under the onions and turn them over. They should have a nice caramelized color to them. You want to flip them so that the other cut side will also get a nice caramelization going. Season this with a tiny sprinkling of salt and let that cook for another 10 to 15 minutes. Once your onions are done, we can start to assemble the tarte tatin. Now, since this is pretty much an upside down tart, you need to arrange your onions at the bottom of your tart dish. Arrange it so that it makes a pretty pattern so that when you flip it over, it will look stunning. This takes a little bit of time and patience, but I promise you the end result is worth the effort. Once you've arranged your onions, scrape up any leftover caramel from the pan and drizzle it on top and set this aside. Take the pastry out of the fridge, flour your work surface or table and start rolling out that pastry dough. Work from the middle out, turning the pastry disc 45 degrees after each roll. This will ensure that the dough is evenly rolled out. It will also stop it from sticking to your bench and you will get a nice circular pastry disc. Make sure to flour your surface whenever it feels like the pastry is getting a little sticky. I love the way that the thyme is speckled through that pastry dough. You want the disc to be a little bit larger than the actual size of the tart pan because we want to tuck the pastry in just a little bit. Once you roll the pastry out, wrap it around your rolling pin to make it easier to lift it and then slowly lay it over the onion base. Use your fingers and carefully tuck the pastry into the onion from the side. If there's any excess pastry, just trim it a little. It's always better to have a little excess pastry than too little. Once your tart is covered and tucked in, take a sharp knife and make a few incisions in the pastry so that any steam that builds up inside can release. Pop this into the oven and bake at 180 for 30 minutes until the pastry has a pale golden color. Take it out of the oven and let it cool down ever so slightly for maybe about 10 minutes. But don't let it cool completely, because then the onions will get stuck onto the pan. Now comes the trickiest part of this whole dish. Flipping this baby over without breaking, spilling, sliding, and in general making a big old mess. Pop a plate on top of your tart pan, grab it from both sides and carefully but fairly quickly flip it over. And then lift up that pan to reveal the most beautifully patterned Tarte Tatin. Sprinkle a little thyme on top and serve this up. You can even sprinkle some feta or goat cheese on top, which works as a great accompaniment for this. And that is my version of an onion Tarte Tatin. Let me know what you think of this recipe and do give it a try at home. And as always, please subscribe to my channel Arubakes to get more food inspiration like this one. Bye!